Half a mile of steel and glass. One city stacked on top of another. Water, waste, heat, people. Every rule of physics fighting back. The math was unforgiving. The engineers had no choice but to break it. This is not just a building. This is the impossible made vertical. The Burj Khalifa rises over 2,700 feet into the sky, and by every rule of physics, water should never reach the top floor, but somehow it does every single day. Getting water to the top of a half-mile tower sounds simple until you do the math and realize the pressure required to do it would literally tear steel pipes apart at the seams. Try pushing water up 2,700 feet through one giant pipe, and the pressure at the bottom hits around 1,200 psi, which is roughly 24 times the force of a fire hose. At that pressure, a single weak joint does not just leak, it fails violently. And you get a geyser blasting through walls and flooding entire floors with no way to stop it until the whole system shuts down. So the engineers scrapped the single pump idea entirely and instead divided the building into 7 independent mechanical zones, each spanning roughly 30 floors, with its own tanks and pumps. Water starts in the basement, where the first pump pushes it up to a tank on the 40th floor, and from there, second pump takes over and pushes it to the next zone, and so on all the way up. Each pump only fights gravity for 30 floors, so the pressure never reaches dangerous levels. The pipes stay intact, and no one on the 86th floor finds a geyser in their hallway. Because every zone operates independently, a burst pipe on floor 80 does not kill the water supply above or below it. The rest of the building keeps running without missing a beat. Now, once water goes up, it eventually has to come back down, and the return trip creates a completely different engineering nightmare that almost no one thinks about until it goes very wrong. Wastewater falling inside a half-mile tower picks up terrifying speed, and when it reaches the bottom and has to switch from vertical to horizontal, it does not stop. It stacks and surges. Engineers call it a hydraulic jump, and when it happens, pressure waves shoot back up through the pipes, sending sewer gas into hallways, and in the worst case, turning a lower floor toilet into a sewage geyser. The fix was to widen the pipes dramatically as you descend, with the main waste lines reaching roughly 24 inches in diameter, which is wider than a large pizza compared to a standard 4-inch house pipe. The wider pipe lets falling water spiral along the walls while keeping an air column at the center, and that air column is what stops the pressure from building into something catastrophic and explosive. Engineers also added staged collection points at various levels throughout the tower, so wastewater does not free fall from the top floor all the way to the basement in one uncontrolled rush. That slows the flow, reduces the pressure, and gives the system time to manage the volume safely before it continues its descent down to the ground level, where a whole new problem was waiting. When the Burj Khalifa opened in 2010, Dubai was still in the middle of a construction frenzy, and the city had not finished building the sewer network needed to handle the tower's waste output. So for the first 3 years after it opened, a fleet of orange trucks would arrive at the base of the world's tallest building every single morning to vacuum up the waste and haul it across the desert. It was one of the most strangely poetic engineering contradictions in modern history. A 163-story tower of 21st century ambition, serviced by a 19th century bucket brigade on wheels. By September 2011, Dubai's underground network finally caught up, and the Burj Khalifa was connected to the city grid. But that 3-year window remains one of the strangest chapters in skyscraper history. While engineers were solving the waste problem, a completely different threat was attacking the building from the outside, and it was relentless because in Dubai, the heat never takes a day off. Residents above the 80th floor see the sun set 2 minutes later than people on the ground and above floor 150 that extends to 3 minutes, putting them measurably closer to the sun than anyone else in the city. That sounds poetic until July, when the desert heat reaches 122 degrees Fahrenheit and 26,000 glass panels wrap around the building and turn it into a greenhouse on a continental scale. To fight this, engineers wrapped the entire tower in 26,000 specialized glass panels, covering over 1.5 million square feet, each one treated with a high-performance reflective coating. That coating bounces sunlight back before it ever enters the building, slashing the cooling load dramatically and giving the air conditioning system a fighting chance before the summer sun even starts climbing. But reflective glass alone was never going to be enough for a Dubai summer, so engineers added a second layer of defense. That sounds like something out of a science fiction film set in the Arctic. At night, when electricity rates drop and city demand is low, a cooling plant buried in the basement of the Burj Khalifa produces massive quantities of ice slurry, storing cold energy like a giant frozen battery. Then during the day, when sunlight hammers those 26,000 panels, the ice slurry melts and sends chilled water through 30-inch pipes up into the building to feed the air conditioning and tap water systems. At peak cooling demand, the tower's capacity is equivalent to melting 13,000 tons of ice in a single day, which gives you a sense of the raw scale of heat the building is fighting off every afternoon. The reflective glass stops heat before it enters the condensation. It produces becomes water that water gets chilled into ice. That ice cools the building the next day. It is one continuous loop of brilliant problem chaining. None of those systems were simple to design or build, and every single solution created a new layer of engineering requirements that had to be solved, on top of everything else already stacked against the project. Water waste and heat were all manageable with the right systems, but there was one more thing that needed to move seamlessly through. A half-mile tower every hour of every day, and that was people. The Burj Khalifa houses around 35,000 people, between residents, workers, and visitors, and moving that many people through 163 floors without total gridlock required rethinking elevators from scratch. A standard elevator system, stopping at every floor, would be a disaster. A car leaving the lobby would take 20 minutes just to reach the top, and by floor 40, every car would already be completely full. The engineers solved it the same way highway planners solved cross-city traffic, by separating express lanes from local streets and making people transfer between them at designated interchange points. The building uses 57 elevators and 8 escalators, but they are divided into 2 types: express shuttles that skip every floor and local elevators that only serve a small range of floors around sky lobbies. There are 3 sky lobbies in the tower, located on floors 43, 76, and 123, and they function exactly like highway rest stops, where you switch from one system to the next. If you need to reach floor 55, you board an express elevator that takes you non-stop to the sky lobby on floor 43. Then you step out and take a local elevator up 12 more floors to your destination. The result is that almost no one in the building is ever more than 2 minutes from their floor, which is remarkable when you consider the alternative would have been waiting 30 minutes for a car that was never empty. But solving these problems on paper during the design phase was nothing compared to what engineers faced when they actually had to build the thing, because construction at 2,000 feet introduced problems no one had fully solved before. One of the biggest was concrete, because concrete and desert heat are fundamentally opposed to each other. And when you add the height of the Burj Khalifa, the problem grows with every single floor you add. Concrete hardens through a chemical process called hydration, and heat accelerates that process dramatically, which in Dubai's 122-degree summer means the mixture could begin setting before it ever reached the upper floors. When concrete hardens too fast, some sections set before others, creating the same effect as baking a cake at too high a temperature. The outside crusts over, while the inside is still wet, leaving hidden cracks and weak points. And there was a more immediate danger too. If the concrete began hardening inside the pipes on its way up, it would clog solid halfway to the top, and there was no way to clear it without destroying the pipe entirely. The engineers responded by developing a completely custom concrete formula using high performance C50 and C80 grade mixes designed specifically to resist heat and stay workable for longer periods at extreme heights. But even the custom formula was not enough on its own, so they added something that sounds almost comically simple. They mixed the concrete with ice, and lots of it, dropping the mixture to near freezing before it touched any pipe. The cold mixture stayed workable long enough to travel from the basement all the way to the upper floors without clogging or beginning to set prematurely, and it reached its destination with full structural integrity intact. Even the ice was not the final answer, because ambient desert heat was still a threat, so they added one more layer to the strategy. They moved every single concrete pour to after sunset without exception. Night temperatures in Dubai still hovered between 85 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit, but compared to the 122-degree daytime furnace, those cooler night hours made the difference between success and structural failure. Ice in the mix, custom-grade concrete, poured only at night with staged pump systems across 7 mechanical zones. This was the formula that built the Burj Khalifa, and it was invented specifically for this one building. Every single solution across water, waste heat, elevators, and concrete construction was created because existing rules and existing technology simply did not work once you moved from a horizontal city to a vertical one. The Burj Khalifa is not just an architectural achievement, it is a complete reinvention of urban infrastructure compressed into one half-mile column of steel glass and engineering ambition rising from a flat desert. But the Burj Khalifa will not hold its records forever, because right now taller towers are already being planned and built, and each one will have to fight the same battles at even greater heights with even higher stakes. The Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia is targeting over 3,200 feet, and the Rise Tower, also in Saudi Arabia, is planning to reach over 6,500 feet, nearly doubling what the Burj Khalifa achieved. Each new tower will need to solve the same problems again, at greater scale, with new materials, new risks, and construction challenges that engineers today have not fully worked out yet, because the physics only gets harder as you go higher. The Burj Khalifa proved that a vertical city could work, but the real question hanging over every future super tall tower is not whether we can build it higher. It is whether the fight to do so is actually worth it. How hard should humanity be willing to work just so someone can drink a glass of water on the 300th floor and call it a good view while the ice in that glass was made the night before to keep the building alive?